Man, as a father, the breath is like a tool, man. I use it for everything, for bringing a kid or myself, usually and myself, into awareness,
Yeah.
helping to kind of dissipate a feeling of anger or something like that. All those things, what they're doing is they're creating and conditioning us. They're creating a space and conditioning us for receiving more awe and wonder and connection, which are three things that are distinctly different, but very similar as well. I put those kind of in that similar box. Awe and wonder and connection. Those are three things we talk a lot about in our space community.
Welcome to Self-Helpful. I'm your guide, Kevin Miller, and I curate the sea of new personal development messages to bring the most influential leaders onto this show. Join me as I question my guests to better understand their counsel so we can all integrate the wisdom into our lives, because we all want to elevate our own experience and improve the way we show up for others. The Self-Helpful Podcast is presented by Ziglar, your premier source for equipping coaches. Visit Ziglar.com. Hello, Self-Helpful listeners. In this episode, how to live in moments instead of minutes. We're continuing the discussion on Jake Eagle and the concept of awe. This is part 3 where I bring on a co-host, and this time it is my brother, Jared Angaza. Because of all the people in my life, he's one who recognizes awe. So we discuss microdosing, mindfulness, as Jake talks about. We get deep into how we invest so much into altering our environment and circumstances in order to alter our mental state. I mean, it'd be great if we could just, snap our fingers and be present and realize a positively altered state, put ourselves in a positively altered state. But most of us can't. So we must look all at what we need to do to facilitate changing our perspective, experiencing awe. So we start by discussing space and the overview effect, made famous now by William Shatner, Captain Kirk himself. He literally went into space. Jared was involved in that project, and it forever changed his view of Earth and life. He can now tap into that for awe. Most of us can't go to space, but what can we do to help us with this topic? That's our show. Brother, I thought right away of having you do this show with me when I brought Jake on to talk about awe. I actually thought about Andy Andrews. He has a book called The Noticer. And yeah, I would say that that's who I experience you to be. You're a noticer of life and moments and awe, and somebody who has a reverence for the word awe. So I knew it would be a quality conversation with you.
Man, I appreciate that. There's a whole bunch of stuff in there that resonates. The reverence and the sacredness of things and the noticing. I said to Saoirse, my oldest daughter, the other day that I said something. I said, "Oh, baby, I love that you're such a noticer." And I thought of Andy Andrews, but she notices things.
Yeah.
She's very aware, and I've done a lot of training to make myself very aware. But I appreciate the opportunities to experience more awe because of that awareness.
Yeah. I think I hear you on that, training yourself. I think I've always thought of you to be someone though, who does key in on special moments and or creating special moments out of the routine, which is what Jake talked about some too. But like you and I were talking about before we did this, I mean, my gosh, you spent the last how many years in the space arena?
I guess about almost 8 right now. Yeah, about 8. Right when the twins were born, and they're almost 8.
About 8 years. Well, and I just remember asking you, I think initially I didn't understand what all was going on, and I thought, well, so what you're out in space trying to get, create a colony on Mars or whatever it may be. And you shared, not to go way down that rabbit hole, but shared that, I mean, a big aspect of it though is really to give people more gratitude for this place that we live on here called Earth. And as you were talking about the overview effect, and you were involved in William Shatner's experience and going up into space and making that term famous. And that's what it was, is this reverential, sacred, overpowering experience he had of awe, and it changed his life. And he came back to Earth as William Shatner, not even Captain Kirk, to share that with us and to share with awe and to bring that into the nuances of our life. So, I mean, yeah, again, I just appreciate your devotion to that and knew it would be key for this conversation.
Thanks. Yeah, I mean, I've worked with Frank White, the author of The Overview Effect, for about 8 years. He was my entry point. I just came in really to support his work. I met him by way of just looking him up on the Harvard website and getting his email address. And I just said, thanks for all the amazing work you've done. And I'm speaking about The Overview Effect from the stage often as I was supporting the work I was doing in East Africa. Because it speaks about our interconnectedness, the profundity of our interconnectedness. But anyway, since then, I've had the privilege of hanging out and talking to astronauts, what we call kind of career astronauts, usually in the government, NASA or JAXA or ESA or whatever, depending on what country you're in. And then there is the new sort of burgeoning realm of citizen astronauts. Like Shatner and many others. And I had the privilege of training for preparation pre-flight and integration post-flight for 2 astronauts that flew on Blue Origin most recently, I guess. And they haven't flown in I don't know, 5 or 6 months now. But before I trained the first Mexican woman, Katia, and then the first Egyptian woman to go to space, Sarah. And man, I mean, really all of the preparation was literally preparing someone for the greatest awe-inspiring event of their life. Literally looking at the Earth from orbit, looking back at that. And the overview effect is something that most astronauts speak about a lot. So most of the ones that didn't have it say that it was because they had to be too focused on what they were doing at the task at hand. That's true. That is not as prevalent, though, obviously, with citizen astronauts. They're only there to have the overview effect, to see the Earth, like that. And they've come back consistently with, like Shatner and many others, this overwhelming urge to preserve and protect the Earth. That's been a pervasive aspect of everyone that has experienced the overview effect. And it represents this cognitive shift in the perspective you have on your relationship with the Earth. Now, I could take that into lots of other realms. Ultimately, what it is it is a significant awe moment that is so awe-inspiring that it's transformational. I think awe for transformation, all for the purpose of transforming someone's perspective, is a big focus of our discussion in the space exploration world. And a lot of the benefit we have of going to space. It's not just about science. It's about what it does to humans' minds and how it creates this cognitive shift. And when you have people of influence having that kind of experience and coming back to Earth, I believe, and that's why I do a lot of the work that I do, that we have a better chance of those humans thinking a lot more, or prioritizing rather, the vitality of planet and people.
Well, okay, to take that and bring it down to Earth. Notice what I did there?
I saw what you did there.
to do that. Well, it actually got me thinking a different way than I was going to go initially, because on one hand, it really, it's a motivator to do some things as consistently as you can, whether it's once a year, once a quarter, whatever, but to do some things in our lives that are that massive awe. To go, I mean, gosh, I live out here in Colorado. People travel from all around the world to go to the Rocky Mountains, and they
Yeah.
experience awe. People hike 14ers, and I think they spend hours and hours suffering so they can get to the top and spend a minute and have that awe. I was talking about that. I think, did I talk about that on this show with Jake? I can't remember. That I read somewhere, and I could probably Google it and find out in 10 seconds, but I didn't go to verify it. But I think it's just a long line now that you have to deal with to climb Everest, and you get to the top and you get like 12 minutes. I mean, that's it. Then get your butt off because there's somebody next in line. Thinking, dude, that's a big effort for 12, if that's what it is, for a short time of awe. But to do that,
well, and the space exploration is, you get like 4 minutes.
Oh, really?
I mean, it depends on what you're flying, but in most cases, just to compare that, it's about 4 minutes. So when I'm prepping an astronaut to go to space, a citizen astronaut on Blue Origin or Virgin Galactic, the two, those are about 4 minutes in space. That's it. So crazy. I want them to be completely zenned out, focused, and not thinking about people floating around in the capsule and all that. So that's a thing for sure.
Well, thinking about that though, that can we do some things to go to the beach, to go to the mountains, to experience something massive? You and I were talking last week about the thing that we're going to go see in Texas. What is it? The solar eclipse or something?
Yeah, the big eclipse.
Yeah, the big eclipse.
Yeah,
but to, go to a big concert. Yeah, go see U2. You and Dad went to go see U2, or whatever. Just do some big awe-inspiring thing, but something that just really, as you said, change. Yeah, it gives you a cognitive shift so that you can come back. And I wrote down your words: come back with a different perspective, a different relationship with your normal life. And I like what you said a minute ago, that it would increase your value of life and gravity of life, and cause you to want to preserve and protect your life. That's a great segment of definitions that you put around that. That's a great call out to go after some of the big environment, to change your environment, go do something that's awe inspiring, but then to bring it down, I guess maybe the other side, if we look at the spectrum of awe, to do that, but then to figure out also, how can we have awe in the day to day? How can I experience it with, like what we've talked about, the ritual of making a great cup of coffee and sitting at it and looking, well, I was going to say looking up at the sun, but on the day that it's raining, to look at the rain, whatever it is that you can actually tap into and feel, has me thinking about it both ways, actually. Yeah. How can I go experience the big one more, but how can I also then bring that into the day to day? And I don't think that we generally conceive of that, especially the microdosing mindfulness type of stuff. That's new. That feels new. That feels like a new thing. And to that, and then you chime in, where he's also saying it's not, I keep thinking about that too. We're not talking about just microdosing mindfulness, have a moment of awe, think of something you're grateful for. He's saying, no, it's not thinking about gratitude. It's feeling, stepping into and feeling. And that feels like it takes more intention. I don't know. It takes another shift, doesn't it?
To feel it? Yeah. I mean,
yeah.
There's a couple of ways to come about this, I think. But one thing that I was thinking of when you were talking in the interview, which it was this, I talk about creating, or rather not creating, but just living in moments rather than minutes. And I talk about that a lot with the kids, like, let's have moments together. I don't care about the minutes. That's not something I'm concerned with. I want to live in the moment, or I want to create a moment, or at least it's not so much about creating it. It's making space for it. We talk about that a lot too with the kids, of making space for miracles, making space for moments, making space for love, to feel that, all that kind of stuff. We tend to crowd the plate with lots of things in our life. And then on the daily, you and Jake talked about ritual, which I like a lot. That's a big part of my life. I know it is with you as well. So all these little rituals. I do this and I do this and I do this, because we're looking for a certain outcome or experience in our life. So we have rituals to support that. I think there's rituals, and then there's kind of like what are your kind of programmed responses, or kind of what's in your toolbox of responses that you can use? And look, I think one of ours in our family is just look up. We use that one a lot. So it's what do I do to shift my perspective, to create
Yeah.
it's Zig would say, you need an attitude adjustment. And I feel like that's our way of getting an attitude adjustment, is to go outside and look up and remember the vastness of space, the beauty of the sky, night, day, rain, shine, whatever, it doesn't matter. It's beautiful. But just to remember, like, to get a perspective shift there is important. I think when you're in the habit, in the ritual even, of living in moments, meaning your attention is on the moment rather than your attention on the minute, on the minutes passing by, or time in any way, you're sort of setting the stage for experiencing more awe. And what I feel like we're doing with our lifestyle choices is that we're making space for more awe in our life. Now, we can do that. One of the things that really got me about Jake's teachings is really about the microdosing part. I'm good at the macro dose. Like, I want to go in and do the big thing. We're going on the big hike. We're going on the big camping trip. We're going on the whatever. That I make lots of space for that.
And you even do like the moments, like, I'm going to go, go have a 20 minutes or an hour or 2 hours at the end of the day of just being present. Right. Like,
Yeah.
what do you call it? Meditation or whatnot. Yeah, I do too. I agree, man. Cause it hit me. It brought to mind when I never forget having, and I might've mentioned this on that show with him, somebody telling me, dude, that's great that you go out and run for an hour or ride for 2 hours or whatever, but then you come back and sit on your butt for 8 hours. You're still suffering the consequences of being sedentary for that long. And it changed me to trying to do more of, when I remind myself, every time I go to the bathroom, drop down and do some push-ups or do some pull-ups or do whatever, try to get some more movement in, microdose the exercise, microdose the movement, I guess it would be microdose the movement. And so, I totally agree. And I'm not doing that. I have not been doing that with mindfulness. Not that well.
I recognize that and the importance of that. It really got me in the interview with Jake. I was really thinking a lot about, I intentionally make space for macro doses of things in my life, whether it be awe or exercise, meditation, which is giving me the awareness and the stillness to be able to experience awe in a more effective way. What I have not done well is to sprinkle in the micro doses. And I'm like, no, I'll wait till the end of the day to do this. And I'm like, oh my, man, it was really getting me when I was listening to the podcast with him, because I was thinking, oh my gosh, I've had a sampling of that enough to realize that what he's saying is true, where I've had these things where, if a human that I care about, and me, I live in a community here with a bunch of other humans that I'm living in community with, if one of them comes up and says, hey, come look at this outside, or hey, let's talk outside or something, whatever, for a second, I'll do it because it's a human connecting with me, and I'll make space for that. And then I go out and I'm like, oh my God, I just spent 5 minutes out here. My whole life feels different. I'm totally recharged. I'm not thinking about that thing I was ticked off about earlier. Why don't I do this all the time? So I really felt some, it's challenging for me, and I'm inspired to do more of that and factor more of that and just allow that for myself. I think so often I just haven't. I'm like, no, I got to do this, and then I'll have this reward at the end. I don't.
Well, we're similar that way. I even think about that. I even do that with food. I can pretty much put food off, but in the evening, man, I want to macrodose. Let's make an event out of it. And if I can't enjoy it to a great degree, or there's not enough time, I don't even want to screw with it. But this thing, well, and of course, he's not saying don't do that, but he's saying also do these micros. And I like that may be the title of the show, living in moments instead of minutes. And because to have a moment means to have an experience, which I do plenty of, but not enough and not intentionally. I had to be with the family and you sit down for dinner or whatever. And, even we usually, pray or whatever, but even beyond that, to sometimes we'll just stop. We're all sitting down and go, guys, here we are. We're all sitting here. We're all alive. My buddy Scott Stearman, he used to come over to the house, and of course we live in the woods, which is all inspiring, but he would do that. He would, where I'm just ready to talk. Hey Scott, how you doing, man? Let's go on in, whatever. He'd go, whoa, look at where you live. Yeah, man, thanks. Yeah. And he just caused a moment. And that's where, Jake's talking. It's 15 seconds, 5 seconds, man, of doing that. And I feel bad. Now, it wasn't that long ago that I had him on the show, but I talked about setting my alarm, for every hour to just try it. I need to commit to doing that, and see what that is like to intentionally do that. Have as you say, a moment, and feel it.
Yeah. I think that's the preparation. That's where you say, look, I want to experience more awe in my life.
Yeah.
I want to be more, well, I think to have that, if that's a goal, then we have to say, okay, well, what's your awareness level? What's your state of awareness at this point? Are you aware enough to catch the things, to notice the things that might induce a feeling of awe? And then next, it's like, are you sort of conditioned emotionally to be able to receive that feeling of awe when it presents itself? And then
how would you define that conditioned?
I think part of it has to do with creating that. It's your own culture, your way of being, and saying like, I'm going to continually be attuned to and prioritizing moments over minutes. I'm looking at, I talk a lot about priorities. I just wrote something about this. I haven't published it yet, but about the title of the piece that I wrote is called "Your Priorities Are Showing," and because I feel like that's always the case. Like I can look at you, and I can get like a snapshot of your life and say, family and physical, vitality, and being outdoors. That's some of the flavor of you. Consequently, you have prioritized those things, or I shouldn't say consequently. My reflecting of you and who you are is that is a reflection of your priorities in your life. Your priorities are showing; they're clear.
Thanks.
I think it's important that if we really want awe, we have to prioritize it. If we want to really experience that, we have to prioritize things that condition us for that, like meditation that brings forth awareness, a deeper awareness, a stillness. That thing that Scott does when he comes to your place and says, hey, take it in, man. Where are you at? Look around. I do that a lot with my friends and have that kind of reputation of I'll often grab everybody and pull everybody in and go, and everyone does it because they want to, they're just not thinking about it.
Yeah. You can feel it. It's kind of like what you said, stepping outside, but then back to what Jake talked about of if we can't change, not if we can't, but sometimes we can't change our environment. Sometimes we can't do it. Sometimes let's say you're in jail. You can't do a whole lot, but you can do that. You can close your eyes, take a deep breath, envision something else. Yeah.
I work a lot with the indigenous elders and specifically the Hawaiian elders.
I thought you were going to say, I've been in jail. I was going to say, yeah, I know you have, dude. So you can go there. So but keep going.
that was longer ago, much longer ago. But another story. But this thing with the elders that we talk a lot about, we talk in the sort of, if you will, the Western world about aloha, just aloha. It feels to most people like that's like saying hello. Sure. But the reason that what that actually means, aloha, is our breath. It's speaking to the breath that connects all of us. we're all breathing the same air, and you can find molecules here that travel all around the earth. It's like the butterfly effect kind of thing. It's all interconnected in that way. We're probably more interconnected through our breath and air than any other element of our humanity. When someone, an elder especially, says aloha, they're speaking about this connection that we have through our breath, and the presence that we have, and the connection that we have to the earth through our breath, to God through our breath. We don't live unless we have breath. It's all about that. And so people talk a lot about the spirit of aloha, which is that breath. So I feel like we have a tool in the toolbox to go and connect with our breath. Just like when my kids, when one of, or myself for that matter, when, if I'm feeling angry, I'll take a breath, a big, deep breath, or a few if I need to. And all of a sudden it's like, wow, I just literally cut the legs out from under that anger. And I now am back, being intentional about the way that I'm showing up. So I feel like there's a lot of like lifestyle habits of connecting with your breath, taking time to be still, to meditate, to whatever it is, even if it's for 20 seconds instead of this 2-hour meditation. I did that for years, where I meditated for like 2 hours a day. It was wild. It was amazing. It's ingrained in me, and I get to carry that forward, and I don't have to still do it 2 hours a day. I think, people like Don DePani that you just interviewed would say the same. There's something that I get to carry forward from that. It was a chapter that was important. Now I have smaller amounts, shorter times with my meditation, but I also have more moments of meditation, which means I'm cultivating that awareness in me, the ability to be still, the ability to be in my breath and to connect in that way. And man, as a father, the breath is like a tool, man. I use it for everything, for bringing a kid or myself, usually and myself, into awareness, helping to kind of dissipate a feeling of anger or something like that. All those things, what they're doing is they're creating and conditioning us. They're creating a space and conditioning us for receiving more awe and wonder and connection, which are three things that are distinctly different, but very similar as well. I put those kind of in that similar box. Awe and wonder and connection. Those are three things we talk a lot about in our space community. Our hope in the space. Go ahead. Yeah.
Well, I know I wanted to pull that out because, how great would it be? I mean, I feel, I should feel privileged. I was going to say guilty. I live in a national forest. I mean,
privileged.
It's just right outside. Even here at my office, when the windows are open and we're not recording, I can look out to the mountain, and outside of Randy's office, it's Pikes Peak there, and Pikes Peak is there. And so we can, literally see something. But how often are we in places where we don't have the ability to see something that's at all inspiring? You're in a cubicle somewhere, or, in a business office, or just, downtown concrete jungle, whatever. And it may be hard. Maybe you can find a tree, but we can't. So we don't have an environmental alteration. Alteration is a word that you just made me think of. We don't have that, because what we're trying to do is create a mental alteration.
We talk about altered states all the time. And so often people have a negative connotation, of being drunk or something. And I'm like, well, that's one kind of altered state, but there's other kinds like elation and connection and awe. Those are altered states.
Okay. Thank you. So altered states, that's what we're trying to do, is alter our mental state. And so we come over here and, if we can't do an environmental, we're trying to look at it. But you just brought something up that I don't think we hit on a whole lot. We did a little bit with Jake, is a physical alteration, physiological alteration to help our mental alteration. And because you're talking about it with breath. You talked about it, kind of with stepping outside, but even if we can't do that with breath, it made me think this last weekend, I was at an event at Ziegler Coach Summit, and we're there, a lot of speakers, and you're there, and there wasn't even anything, there was nothing negative. It was all good. And yet a speaker got up and he said, okay, everybody do me a favor, stand up and, put your arms over your head and, stand up on your tippy toes or jump a couple of times, take a deep breath or something like that. Everybody's kind of laughing or whatever. Anyways, I did that and sat down and it was like, holy smokes. What a great alteration. I can't believe. And again, nothing bad was happening. I wasn't paying attention to feeling or aware of anything negative, but it still just lifted me. So I think you're bringing in that's another aspect that we can do is just do a physical alteration to help with this mental alteration. Take a deep breath, stand up, stretch, do whatever. A big one for me is just let my shoulders down, because unfortunately my shoulders are often up here by my ears, and irritates fire out of my Eliza, your niece. Sent me a little meme or something at some point, and it was somebody saying, I'm afraid that if I've gotten to the point where I'm afraid if I unclenched my jaw and let my shoulders down, I would just dissolve in the rain, like dissolve like cotton candy in the rain. Son of a gun. I hate that I relate to that a little bit, but so anyways, that was my whole point. I love that an environmental alteration is awesome. And if you got the woods or whatever you can look out on, or the beach or something, but if not, how about a physical alteration as an effort to get down here to what we're also looking for is a mental alteration, so we can experience awe, experience joy and peace and inspiration.
Yeah. And our breath, is a direct conduit to that opening up that space, or a tool for opening up that space, and having a physiological shift that can then, open up the way for a mental, emotional shift or experience of awe. And that's important. I mean, it's the same thing with astronauts, when I'm working with them on the preparation, they're going to have a physiological event when they are blasted off the Earth on the tip of a controlled bomb, essentially. And then
That's
they go out.
Terrifying way to put it, but I got it. Yeah.
It's a common way of saying it around here, but yeah. And then there's they're weightless. They're in weightlessness, which, and in some regards, all the things they're going through, like, oh my God, they're on top of this, controlled bomb, and they're going through that and, punching through the atmosphere at, the Kármán line at, 62 miles off the planet. And, it's amazing. And then there's floating in space, there's weightlessness, all that kind of stuff. And what I'm working with them on is having an awareness despite all of that going on. Mm-hmm. And you'll see some of them get caught up in like, oh, we've got Skittles. That was the first one. And, and then Skittles were floating around or whatever. It was like, that's cool, but you missed a little bit of opportunity to be looking at the Earth from your window. So I thought about that when I was training, at the time it was Katya. My goal there was to have them to be able to dial in on the Earth and that perspective that, from orbit, and to be able to soak all of that in. It's similar to be, despite what's going on around them, and to use their breath to do that, which we did breath work. And then they had these little routines that they would go through on the way up. And then when they got there, they could be totally dialed in. So we can look at all kinds of other aspects of our life in terms of training for those moments of awe on the regular. Maybe it's not going, to orbit and looking at the Earth. Maybe it's just going to the park. Maybe it's going to the beach. Maybe it's doing whatever, but maybe it's just doing life every day in the office. And you can take a moment, for that, to connect with your breath, to be aware of the things that you may not be aware of otherwise. And we tend to compartmentalize largely out of what feels like just as a utilitarian aspect of getting through life. Like we have to compartmentalize, we have to block things out, we have to get tunnel vision on things. And, there's a time when that's needed, but otherwise I'm looking at how do I condition myself to be more aware so I can soak in more moments of awe, so I can notice the bird over there on the tree, or, the outrageous cobalt blue of the sky that I can see right now in San Diego. It's the first time we have a blue sky in a little while. And I'm really noticing it. It's like, it's powerful, but I don't get to feel that unless I'm in the habit of conditioning myself for it, so that I can actually see it and be aware when a moment happens.
Yeah. Well, Okay, so let me take it on another aspect that is hard to get. It's a little daunting. I mean, because we're talking about, at the end of the day, what are we talking about? We just want to feel good. I just want to feel good. All this is
Well,
just
we
never
talk
to
about on
feel.
the show, we want to elevate our own experience and improve the way we show up for others. So it's
So
like,
I just want to elevate my own
I want to
experience.
feel better.
I want to feel good. I want to feel happy right now. And so,
Yeah.
what are we going to do? And of course, all of this is just saying, well, don't. I mean, there are some things you can do, but we're trying to just get you to be kind of like our old Uncle Nate. Thanks for being,
Thanks for being.
and
Yep.
to that degree, I don't know who said it, but it was kind of like, so you want to know how to be happy? Yeah. Well, just be happy. Just right now, be happy.
Well, that's a Buddhist, happiness is the way. It's a Buddhist philosophy that happiness is the way, meaning you have to feel happy, get yourself into that state in order to be happy. You have to conjure, if you will, that kind of feeling, which is tough, man. Most people can't get there.
I was going to say, because it does bring this to some degree of it. It's just smoke and mirrors, man, which is a rabbit hole. It's hard to go down, but we're just talking about whatever you got to do to get yourself happy. So right now, I just want to be happy. And the reality is that it's very, very difficult to do that. And we may need to go to freaking space to give us an overview effect so that we can change our paradigm. I see, hold on, to be happy. But I do think about that sometimes, like, what are the rigmarole I got to do to go be happy? I'm going to go, get on my mountain bike and go ride out in the Rocky Mountains, whatever. And now I feel happy. That's awesome. Be even awesomer too, if you could just get that same feeling without having to do all that. Is that fair?
For sure. No, it is fair, more than fair. And I think I smiled because it reminded me of a conversation I had with a friend of mine. He's an amazing cinematographer. He's made some beautiful films. Check out Overview and Planetary. They're both on Vimeo. I think YouTube as well. The Overview was the one about Frank White's work on the overview effect. And it broke like all the Vimeo records back in the day when it came out, like 8 million views in the first month or something like that. And it's a 20-minute film. I was talking to Guy, is his name, Guy Reed. Oh, we were in a Clubhouse conversation, and we were hosting a discussion on indigenous perspective in the space exploration world. And he jokingly said, man, actually, you know what? He used the controlled bomb discussion as well. But he said, these days we have to strap ourselves onto the tip of a controlled bomb, blast ourselves off the earth and look back at it just to have a little bit of the kind of perspective that our ancestors had as they sat around a fire.
That's fair.
I'm thinking, oh my God, you nailed it. It's true. That's because we're conditioned for lots of other things outside of experiencing awe and connection and wonder. Those are things that that our ancestors, our indigenous ancestors and current indigenous, populations they prioritize that over other things. We're just kind of coming around and going, hey, wouldn't it be cool if we did this? And I'm like, yeah, we used to do that all the time. That's how we were actually created. It was to be present, to be connected, to have moments rather than minutes. We weren't born with watches on our wrists. As you know, I've never owned one other than one that you gave me when I was very young and I was doing wind sprints and I needed a timer. I didn't hold on to it very long because I didn't want to know what time it was. That's the funny part.
Funny. I mean, it is a mind game. Yeah. And of course, all that stuff's not fair. I was even thinking about that. Like when I go for a mountain bike ride, I'm not just doing it so I can end up at the end and say, no, I'm happy. I mean, it's a thrill. I'm in flow and great joy while I'm doing it. But to realize that we are, and I guess I don't want to say that to make any of us feel bad, that we do need to jump through some hoops. Most of us need to. We need to take a deep breath. We need to get up and stretch. We may need to go outside. We may need to do something radical, but it would be great too if we could close our eyes or whatever, just be still and feel happy and be. And that is, that maybe that's whatever we want to call it, enlightenment or whatnot, that we want to come to being able to do that in a moment and do those other things as well. But can I, in 5 seconds or in 15 seconds, look at again, or can I just close my eyes and just go to a thought and feel it
Yeah.
there. I mean, again, I stumble over words because I don't want to. No, don't think. I wonder if Jake would say, no. You don't need to think. Just feel,
Yeah.
or consider a moment, like you said. Consider a moment that you have had. And there probably does have to be some context. I mean, if you've never experienced anything, where can you go? I mean, there is relevance to going to an experience, a moment, maybe capture one, your happy place in essence, or a happy moment that you can then call on in a moment and be there and watch all those things happen. Watch the fight or flight feeling go, watch the anxiety go for a moment and
Yeah.
be there and give yourself that vitamin that then changes you. Well, actually, because if you do that and your heart rate lowers and you leave fight or flight or whatever, you're going to change your reality for the next hour out of that 15 seconds or 5 seconds or whatever it is. And that's big medicine.
Well, I think the perception of most folks, and I'm guilty at times, is that taking the time for a microdose, breath of air or connection with nature or whatever, is going to somehow compromise the goals of the day, the pragmatic kind of stuff that we have to
But
do for the
scrolling
day.
Instagram for 20 minutes doesn't. Right. But
Yeah,
keep
I
going.
know. Somehow that creeps in there. But the idea is that, I don't know. I mean, it's interesting how ironic it is, because it actually is in no way compromising, the grand goal of it. And if anything, it's enhancing it, our ability to connect and to be. I don't think anybody would look at you and say, look, man, I really think that you shouldn't take so much time for connection and awe, and
No,
reverence.
I just
Who's
thought
going to
of,
say that?
I just thought of the big prize fight or the MMA fight or whatever, and you're out there doing it and they ring the bell and you get whatever you get, 30 seconds or a minute of peace. And some dude going, no, man, I don't need that. I'm going to do jumping jacks during the thing, instead of rest.
Yeah.
No, sit down, take a drink of water. Yeah, it's dumb. It's dumb.
Gather yourself. Yeah.
It's dumb. I'm dumb often because I'm doing that too. Thinking, no, I got to stay on it. I got to stay on it instead of step back. Kind of that. What is that? The slow down to speed up, kind of concept. That this makes complete logical sense, but we don't do it. It's still counterintuitive somehow to the cultural perspective that we've all agreed with.
You've just reminded me of something. The idea, I talk a lot about the astronaut way. Sorry, today's show is about astronauts apparently. But the way, it's just where my world is. But I love that there is a philosophy there. Actually, it's a similar philosophy with Navy SEALs. I think they say the same thing. It's the same saying, that slow is fast. I think it's slow is smooth and smooth is fast, or something like that, is the whole deal. But the idea, the point of that, what they're actually getting at, the essence is, we can't afford to rush through something, miss a step, cut a corner, or whatever, because everybody dies. They're in the ISS, the International Space Station. There's a pinhole in the wall, everybody's dead. It's that there's no margin for error. So they do everything from a very educated. There's a lot of Eastern philosophy of Bushido and the samurai and things that I could kind of bring into this, because it's also the same belief. Like, you cannot afford to mess this up, but you have to train hard enough to be so in tune with God, with the universe, with the flow of the world, with all the things around you. That's awareness, I think. That you can then move at a rapid pace through something, but not rush. We don't rush. Actually, I think I have a statement. I do. I have a statement for my clients in my documents when I work with a client, that says something to the effect of, I will respond to urgency, but you will never find me rushing. Like, I'm not going to rush into something. If there's something urgent, I'll respond effectively. But I'm not going to rush. I'm not going to feel the stress of all that, kind of like most people do when they're rushed or whatever. I'm like, that's not going to serve anybody. So I'm not going to do that. I'm going to tell you ahead of time. I will respond to urgency when needed. But even that, it's just whatever, we may intentionally move up the timeline or something like that. But I think we have, I don't know, we have an opportunity to continually be conditioning ourselves to have a different kind of experience. I feel like one kind of a conditioning, scrolling, doom scrolling or whatever through all the platforms, that's a kind of conditioning that sort of eliminates our possibility for connection and awe and wonder on one side. It's replacing it. Contrary to that, on the other side, the meditation, the being with our breath, the microdosing, these moments of connection and awareness, whatever, that's what's then conditioning us for experiencing more. Like, I feel like two people can walk out the door in a day and go and have kind of this, do the similar things and whatever, but have a totally different experience because of their conditioning.
Oh, okay. I want to go right there. One of the things that came up in the show, I think, or it was at least in my notes from the show with Jake, was how we have lost so many of our moments to devices.
Mm-hmm.
We don't have a spare moment. We don't take a moment. Okay. But on that
you
thing,
talked about not taking the phone into the John, and I thought that's a good one. That's one I practice.
Yeah.
It's like, nope, I don't want to make a thing out of that.
So conditioning. Conditioning, to think about that. And I wonder if we've conditioned ourselves out of the ability to be aware of awe and to experience awe. Even
Most
that,
have, I think, yeah.
Yeah, I think, well, and as a culture, we pummel our psyche with these images, videos, whatever, of everything, of crazy stuff, of ridiculous stuff. And I wonder if we delude ourselves from that, from realizing what real awe is. Kind of like, eons ago when you didn't see not eons, but a long time ago, you didn't see a bear that often. You see one, it was awesome. Well, now you can see somebody seeing a bear and walking up to it, not very wisely, constantly, on Instagram, and we don't see that. And sometimes I think, I don't know, do we separate virtual reality from real reality? We know that even from the numbingness. We talk about violence in video games and whatever, and does that numb us for violence in real life? I think it has to.
Yeah.
Thank you. That's it. Thank you. That was the word. That's what I'm dancing around. Desensitize. We desensitize ourselves. And even to then how we do exclaim everything to be awesome. Everything's awesome. That is an awesome burrito, whatever. And it almost makes me think of doing an audit, a personal audit, and make a list of what is awesome to you. What is awe-inspiring? Does anybody know anymore? What is awe-inspiring to you? What?
Yeah, our language affects that. Yeah. And you said something about it in the thing. You said, I had this awesome experience. I went to the moon and I had this awesome burrito. It's like, really? They're both awesome? And I appreciate that. And I talk again to the kids a lot about that. Anything I'm talking to my kids about, I'm talking to myself about, by the way. But it's that we talk about, hey, careful with your words. What I don't mean careful. Be mindful with your words, and recognize, don't even joke about negative things happening to you or to others and things like that. I don't.
You remember Gus? You remember Gus, my best man in my wedding. I'll never forget him because it's never gone out of my psyche. And I said something I hate. I hate something, and he said, "Whoa, hate? That's a strong word."
Oh my God.
And it just, yeah. Okay. Maybe it came from Gus. I've never forgotten that. I think about it anytime I hear the word hate, which I don't, I'd be tempted to say I haven't used that word in years because it has so much gravity to me now to actually hate. How could I ever attach that to a person and even to a thing? I could say like, gosh, I hate violence against, oppressed people. Okay. That's
violence in general. Yeah.
Yeah. Well, sure. Yeah. Okay. But so few things that I could say I actually hate. I just appreciate him. He said, man, that's like finality, man. To hate, that's the end.
You've made a resolution there. Like you've resolved to something at that point.
Yeah.
That's another one with the kids. And I say, be mindful with your words. You're I often say you're casting spells. That's why we say spelling. You're spelling something. You know, you're using words. You're writing
That's
it out.
great.
You're putting something out there that I feel like you're more likely to get that kind of result if you're saying it all the time and you're speaking it into existence.
Yeah.
One of the things with the kids is that we don't say hate. They know that. Like every now and then they'll say something. You know, they're around other kids and they hear it, whatever, and they'll say it just out of a habit or something, or non-awareness. And I say, hey, are you sure? And they're like, no, I'm sorry, I do not hate that. I just don't like it. And I think about it with myself.
I prefer not to have Brussels sprouts, but I don't hate it. Don't hate on the Brussels sprouts, guys.
Exactly. Another, you know, while we're on the subject, another one that I've been very diligent about sort of weeding out of our vocabulary is the word promise, which is on the other side of that, which most people wouldn't see as a bad word. But I have...
Come on, I'm exclaiming over here because that's another one top of my list. You hear it in movies and shows all the time, promise. And I pretty much, I'm hardly ever going to promise you anything. I will promise that I will do my best to always be there for you. I promise I will have deep, enduring love for you. But otherwise, man, there's so little I can control. I'm reticent to promise anything ever, almost. So yeah, well, thank you. I'm with you.
It serves multiple purposes. Like one, I have tattooed on my arm, my word is bond. My word is my bond, which is an old Quaker saying as well as a Rastafarian saying. And that if I say something, it's true.
Those don't go together,
I know.
Man.
I've always loved that combination. Yeah, you know, they're hanging out.
Yeah.
So the other part of it is just to say, like, if I say I'm going to do it, that's it. I don't need a word to promise, a concept to solidify that. The other thing is that if I'm, you know, a lot of times you'll say something, a kid will say, you promise, or whatever, like, and I look at them and say, no, I don't need a word to delineate whether or not I'm lying to you or not. I'm just not. If I say it, I'm saying it. I'm owning it. It's my bond.
And a meteor may fall out of the sky and take me out in 5 minutes. So I know, but I'm...
Yeah, and at that point, then you're like, "Oh, you broke your promise." What can I do about that?
Thank you.
So it's kind of a messy word that I don't, or term that I don't really appreciate. Anyway, back to the language. Awesome, yeah, all those things. One of the things I've done as a writer, and recognizing that so much of my work revolves around me writing, usually for other people like you, but writing is something that it's easy to fall into the trap of overusing superlatives. So there's these big words, you know, and awesome and, you know, phenomenal and fantastic and, you know, all these things, you know, and I like, what was it? Chaucer, the guy that was like, that wrote all the fantastical thing. What was it? A Knight's Tale, that film that I think our family's
favorite characters ever. So if you guys don't know, A Knight's Tale, old movie with Heath Ledger. We own it. It's one like I watch, you know, every year or so. And the character, it's the guy who plays Vision, right?
Yeah, and I know his name, and he's one of my favorite actors, and for some reason is escaping my...
Everybody knows the whole WandaVision, whatever, the red dude, Vision, plays this character, Chaucer. Anyways, yes, I love...
Who's a real... It was based on a real story. All of that was based on a real character. Chaucer was real, but he was going and have these wild, you know, presentations and introductions, you know, of the knight, you know, in that. And I feel like there's a time for that, and there's the poetry, and there's all that, but it has to be used in moderation, or we water it down so much that it no longer has any effect anymore.
Okay, so the joke in our family is some meme that was put out. It says, I use big words, so I'll see more photosynthesis, or something like that.
Yeah,
that was it. I use big words, so I'll see more photosynthesis, something like that. I think that's what it is. But yeah, the delusion. I'm stuck on your word, desensitized. Desensitized.
We talk about that a lot too, because I mean, even, you know, as a parent, I get this stuff with people telling me like, oh, your kids don't see any violence on TV or anything like that. And, they don't have this experience or that experience, they're not going to be acclimated to that stuff. They're going to be, they're never going to make it in the real world. And I'm like,
acclimate them to hate and violence.
Yeah. I was like, look, first of all, they're already living in the real world. I don't know how you would delineate. And second of all, I don't want my kids or myself to be so desensitized to violence that it just becomes okay. In fact, I want them to be absolutely appalled, which is what you're scared of when you're telling me this. I want them to be appalled of violence. I want them to look at that and go, oh my God, how could that exist in this world? How could we have that? I don't. So with a similar kind of lens on that, I don't want to be desensitized either to awe. I don't want to be desensitized to any of these other things that we're talking about that are positive. I don't want to be desensitized to connection or love or any of that. Those are the things I want to be paying attention to, which means I'm probably going to have to weed out some doom scrolling and some other, which I do. As you know, I haven't participated in social media in a few years. And wow, does that feel wonderful. It's like a whole world of energy I'm not giving away. Instead, I'm giving that to my kids or to my own practice of presence and awareness and so on.
I do. I want to. I don't think that we hit on this, but I mean, we are talking in an aspect of feeling. We're using that word feeling, and we are desensitized to feeling. I mean, I shared that just on, there's aspects of emotions, especially negative emotions, that I don't know if I was desensitized to. It wasn't like I was awash in them, but I just didn't have a place for them. I just cut them off. They had no place in my life. And therefore I was out of touch with compassion, with a lot of aspects of feeling that we need to come in and realize, gosh, what does move us? What can we feel? Because I'm looking at Jake's definition of awe, and he says an emotional experience in which we sense being in the presence of something that transcends our normal perception of the world. But an emotional experience. Man, we've got people who aren't doing that. We're numbing ourselves out with, drugs, alcohol, whatever, or we're trying to feel, which is, man, I think, well, we've got, people like kids who cut, or people who cut, literally take a knife and cut themselves. And it's an aspect of wanting to, well, there's lots of stuff wrapped up in that. But one aspect is trying to feel, or our guy who wrote the book that we're both reading again right now, Letting Go. Can't remember his name.
Stephen R. Hawking.
Not
Stephen Hawking. Sorry. I was reading a Stephen Hawking book earlier today. David R. Hawkins.
Thank you. Thank you. I thought that sounded too close. Yeah, I think about it too. David R. Hawkins. So who's no longer living as well. The book Letting Go. And I think in there, he talks about if we were something effective in touch with our emotions and able to feel healthfully and, in a healthy place, people would not watch horror movies. It was interesting to me. I think he has that in the book where they wouldn't watch. Yeah.
Yeah. It is in the book. And it came up, not from the book, but that discussion came up with the kids this last weekend for the first time. Another kid in our community said something about, asked Saoirse, I think my daughter, have you ever watched a horror movie? And she said, what's a horror movie? And I said, yeah, let's keep it that way.
Yeah.
And, and she asked,
I told that story the other day in regards to one of my kids who said, what's a Pop-Tart? I was like, God bless you.
Yeah. Yeah. We had what's an Oreo about a year ago at a party. And I was like, oh, wow. You made it 10 years. And anyway, by the way, I told her and she said, yeah, can I have some dried mango instead? And I said, yes, when it came to the Oreo thing. Yeah. But with a horror film, I just said, it's movies that people make usually about killing other people. And then people watch those movies and watch people kill people. And Saoirse was appalled. She said, what do you mean? Like people watch that? And I said, yeah. That's what a horror movie is. Remember that and move on. It doesn't need to be part of your life. It's not been part of mine. I've never intentionally watched a horror movie in my life. I walked in like once or twice when I was a kid to other kids that you probably remember and saw a bit of a, Freddy, what was it?
Krueger.
Freddy Krueger. Yeah. Nightmare on Elm Street, stuff like that. And those things are still like programmed in my mind at 45 years old.
I'm still scared of
like
TV.
try to wash it out.
I'm scared of old phones, rotary phones, because of Freddy Krueger, and I'm scared of TV screens because of Poltergeist. Man, those things scarred me for life. Totally.
Yeah. And storm drains because of it. Stephen King. All those kind of things. It's like they just those are little tiny. Think about you and I. That just the teeniest bit of horror films that crept into our lives that we didn't even watch intentionally, and they just kind of crept in, and we're still dealing with it. 20, 30 years later.
No, it was a commercial. It was a commercial about a movie about Bigfoot back in the day that had me sleeping under the covers for like a decade in my youth. Yeah.
What on earth?
Again, we're talking about feeling. Yeah, I know. But we're talking about feeling, and and this isn't to discount somebody who likes horror films or anything. That's not the point. But it's to look at our desensitization. If we're looking at being able to even, because it's got me curious now about, and it's not just easy to feel a good emotion necessarily. I think there's a lot of people who are struggling today to even know what to attach that good feeling to. Yeah. And we're saying, here's what you do to go experience that good feeling. And they're going, man, I don't know what that good feeling is. It's kind of like asking people to, come back and recommit to your dreams. I go, dude, I never had any dreams. That's fair. I mean, a lot of people are there. They got to find them for the first times. So there may be people listening to this who need to find those feelings, those happy feelings, those moments, to bring it back to what you said. They may need to come into contact with and experience those for the first time, which again draws back to the overview effect. If somebody's listening and finds themselves there, there may be a time when this would be a great field trip for you to go experience some things that make you feel, and it may not be all positive. Go experience something that breaks your heart. Go to the Humane Society or to an orphanage, or watch something of that breaks your heart as well, and helps you feel in a healthy human way, not a
When you interviewed me a couple of years ago, and I can't remember exactly what the question was. You asked me something about my life and why I do the things I do and experience whatever. I remember saying I hurl myself into experiences all the time. I just keep hurling myself into some experience, and it really does feel like hurling was the proper term. That's often what's happening. I'm just like jumping into the thing. I don't know what's going to happen exactly. Sometimes it is, at least feels at the time, negative, but it takes me on a journey. It takes me through something, and I get to feel more deeply. And it's, I don't know. The other thing is, you know what? There's another side of this. And I know we're getting close to the end here, so I want to make sure that we get this in here, because it's an important aspect in the realm of awe. I feel like there's a term that I often come back to in the discussions with the space community. And there was, I can't remember who said, I think it was on Apollo 14 maybe, or 11, that somebody said that, they should have sent poets. What they meant is that, they should have sent poets to space so that they could come back and articulate it more eloquently than we could as engineers and scientists and so on. That's fair, the reasonable assessment or hypothesis there. But there's a side of it that I actually love about engineers and scientists that are not super eloquent with their words, coming back and having to fumble through trying to explain something that is in fact ineffable. And there's been some people in our community saying like, no, we need to be better at explaining and so on. And I say, then what? We explain everything away in our lives, which I feel is another aspect of desensitization, if that's a term. And I feel like there's I live for ineffable moments. People say like, well, don't you want,
as opposed to mystery?
Well, there's some nuanced difference between those two, I think. Okay. But I do appreciate the mystery of things. It's in the same box, I think. But I I do appreciate mystery. I don't want to knowing. I feel like so often we're like, oh, I want to know everything. I want to know about all this. And I'm like, I don't really. I like a little bit of mystery. I like the fact that we can't quite explain certain things. People talk about, oh, this supernatural experience or whatever. And I'm like, look, even if you break down the actual word, supernatural, doesn't that super, if you're super cool, aren't you really cool? If you're supernatural, you're really natural.
That's great.
I mean, I think about that. It's like, that is the supernatural, the things that get labeled as supernatural so often, I think they are properly labeled and that it is really natural. That is who we are and how we're created. But colloquially, it doesn't actually mean that. So I don't know. I feel like we have a tendency to try to explain everything away. Again, I'm a strategist. I get paid to explain stuff all the time, but I really, really, really appreciate the ineffable. I appreciate those moments where somebody says, can you describe this? And I go, I don't think I can. That's how good it was. It was that good that I can't explain it. Man, I love those moments. And I'm living for those kind of moments. That's what I'm making space for, is ineffable moments of awe.
That's okay. It makes me, I just wrote down, the things that you can't describe, you can only experience.
Yeah.
And there's just, that's okay. That one's great. And it got me thinking of a bunch of stuff that things that you can't describe, you can only experience it. And I would say, I didn't intend to come to this, but for those who are struggling to tap into this awe that we're trying to say, take a moment to experience in your day. You may need to go experience some things, the overview effect, whatever. And I right away thought of 3 resources that I love, a book and 2 movies along these lines. One is Hector and the Search for Happiness, where he's just kind of going along and realizes I need to experience some things. It's very similar to, I don't think quite as profound as another one I love, The Secret Life of Walter Mitty.
I did watch that actually just recently with the like 5 or 6 months ago for the first time with the kids, and I agree. Suffice it to say, I was like, I get why this is so cool. Yeah,
it's Ben Stiller, and he's ultimately going to write a personals ad, and the guy who's helping him at eHarmony or something is like, dude, there's just nothing here to even write down. You've done nothing, and so he goes to experience something. Which then my last resource on this is Donald Miller, one of my author I love, 1,000,000 Miles in 1,000 Years, which it's kind of a memoir, and he's studying, or he gets inspired to go study what makes a good story, what makes a good movie. It actually goes to a script writing class with a legend on movies. And it's a character who wants something and overcomes conflict to get it. And he breaks it down and tries to live it. And he rides his bike across America, and he goes and kayaks up in Canada and meets Bob Goff, who's now famous, I think, because of Donald Miller. And I know you have ties to Bob. And but these are stories of people.
Bob and Tom Ritchie, who you also have ties to, and a lot of Donald's experiences in that book were him talking about hanging out with, or being inspired by the work of Tom Ritchie, who's I was facilitating. And Bob Goff, who's
building an airplane for,
mother of my children, was also working for Bob Goff at the time. And he had some experiences. He went out and lived. He did some things to be able to open himself up to experience more awe so that he could write a better story with his life. I love that story. Yeah,
I do too, that you can then tap into. So all that to come back around to Jake, to tap into in that moment and have reverence and have a moment of awe, that it is something that I think that you have to have some experiential nature to be able to do. If you have been living in a prison cell your entire life, you may not have those things to tap into, and you're going to be at a deficit here. So I just wanted to hit on that, because I know that there's some people who've had hard circumstances, and they may struggle with how to tap into that. So, and yet a good reminder for all of us, in so many ways, man. This is just a joy. I haven't laughed that much in a podcast in a while as well. So, brother, I knew it would be quality, man. Thank you. Thanks for your how you often draw me and I think others to awe. Jake would be proud, I believe. Okay, the catalyst for this episode again is Jake Eagle, co-author of the book, The Power of Awe, Overcome Burnout and Anxiety, Ease Chronic Pain, Find Clarity and Purpose in less than 1 minute per day. You can find the book anywhere, and you can connect with Jake at the website is liveconscious.com. Friends, thank you for tuning into Self-Helpful, where I curate the sea of new personal development materials and help you integrate wisdom into your life, because we all want to elevate our own experience and improve the way we show up for others.